David, let's get right into it. How is the current chaos in Los Angeles playing out among the Democratic Party? Because I see some cracks happening with John Fetterman. A little later, we're going to talk to Ro Khanna, and he may have some things to say that are not quite the party line. So what's happening with the Democrats?
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch. It's really a good test for whether or not they have sort of learned any quick lessons from the 2024 election in terms of how you talk about stuff like this. Because whatever your points of view are on the extent of the protests or riots and who's at fault, the number one thing you want to do here is condemn them and say that anybody who commits acts of violence or worse should all be arrested. I think really they're trying to figure out what to do because there is so much from their perspective that they're tackling. It's not just, what do we say about violence or violent protests? It's what do we say about the moves President Trump has made, some of them unusual for presidents, to federalize the National Guard and send in the Marines. The federalization of the National Guard hasn't happened since 1965. Something President Trump didn't even do in 2020 when you had.
Hold on, David. Hold on. Colonel Schlichter here, federalized 1992 with the 3rd Battalion, 160th Infantry. Also, former commander of the unit, or deputy commander and acting commander of the unit that got mobilized. Author of the first law review article on military support to civilian operations. Somebody is
by the way,
giving you bad info.
No, it's stuff that I've read. I lived through those riots as an LA native, and I appreciate that you corrected me. I think my point still holds in describing what the Democrats are going through, and that it is rather unusual, and that Trump didn't even do it in 2020 when the riots were a lot worse and a lot more widespread. So when you ask me, what are they doing? I don't think they know what they're doing yet, because I think that they have, real issues with how Trump has chosen to respond to this. I think most voters will not, or at least the majority of voters will not. I've been making that point when I've been asked about this. I think when you look at his support, when you look at the support for his policies to combat illegal immigration and beef up border security, there's been a lot of support for actions like this when he talks about doing things like this. And it's always possible that after a couple of weeks of this, some people will have second thoughts and change their mind. But nobody should make that assumption. And I think Democrats, some of them you've seen go to the reflexive place, just focusing on the president and his response and not on the protests and the riots and some of the reasons that sparked the decision to send in the National Guard by the president and not the governor. I'll say one more thing, Kurt. I think if Governor Newsom would have been smart, he would have done it himself.
Yes.
He would have cut the president off at the pass, and he would have said, we're not accepting this, that, I'm with you. I totally get it. And, we hate Trump, and, how he's handling this is wrong, but we don't commit acts of violence. We protest peacefully. That would have been a much better move, I think, than what he's chosen to do. At least that's my initial read.
Look, I think you're dead right on this. I think also Trump is using these guardsmen perfectly. If you look at the units they brought up, which are infantry, not any of the military police battalion or brigade, they are using them for point security. They are guarding federal facilities. They're not out there busting heads or running and gunning like the 1992 riots, which are extremely kinetic. So Donald Trump has gained the image of strength by bringing up the National Guard, and he's got the Marines on call as well, but they're not actually doing anything. They're leaving it to the LAPD, LA Sheriffs, CHP to actually do the work on the street. Let me ask you, how do you think this affects Gavin Newsom's chances of becoming president in early 2029?
Well, it all depends, right? This could play well in a Democratic primary if he runs, and then he can say, I stood up to Trump, I told him to arrest me, blah, blah, blah. It could also, work against him in a general election if he's running against, somebody who says, what's going to happen if we have unrest? What's the governor going to do about it as president? I also think it's, true that these things are not static, and it is possible that people, in the coming weeks and months will decide that the president overreacted, Again, because this is localized and they might take issue with it. So it's very hard to predict. But I think my initial, read is I think if you're a Democrat, you want to be on the side of law and order, so that you can protect yourself from criticism and cut off Republicans at the pass as a political matter. And I think you have to understand that one of the reasons why the president's numbers have remained, relatively okay for him in the mid-40s is because even though there's been a lot of dissatisfaction with his handling of the economy from time to time, there has not been dissatisfaction with his handling of border security at all. And I just think they have to deal with the reality of it, or they have to be very smart and strategic and be good at threading the needle between saying that we're not going to stand for riots, but we think that the president is going about this in the wrong way, and be able to lay that out in a way that voters will understand.
Well, David Drucker, I think the only Democrats I've seen who followed your advice are John Fetterman, who seems to be a true maverick, and Ro Khanna has some interesting perspectives on it too. Are there any other Democrats out there saying, wait a minute, this is not okay, this violence has to stop, and not on the condition that Donald Trump stops enforcing the laws he promised to enforce, because we don't give in?
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but this is a relatively new development in the world, and so it'll be interesting to see what Democrats are saying about this next.
Well, let me ask you one key question. We only have about 30 seconds left. I've seen Republican fundraising off this. Have you seen any Democrat fundraising off this?
I have not, but I wouldn't be surprised if I have missed it, because I'm sure there are some progressives in deep blue districts that are going to focus on the president's use of the National Guard and the Marines, et cetera, to say all sorts of things. And I've got plenty of liberal friends who find this whole thing unconscionable.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.